Welcome back to a new episode of the Peak Signing Agents podcast and YouTube channel. I'm your host, DVO, Derek Van Otten, and I'm here to help you become the best notary and signing agent that you can possibly be. And what makes me qualified to talk about this? I have been a notary signing agent for 9 years now, and I have run a signing service for about the last 5 years, and I have seen thousands upon thousands of closings. So here's another story that I'm sharing with you. From these stories that I'm about to share with you, I have a couple key takeaways. And that's what I want to share with you and talk about the importance of having a good quality notary journal. So let me share a couple of stories. The first story is a notary that I hire quite frequently in my area. He wasn't doing a closing for me or one of my clients. However, it did get to one of my clients. So let me share that story. So this notary, they were called from a friend, and their friend said, "Hey, my friend needs a warranty deed signed and notarized. Can you help him out?" So this notary said, "Sure." So this was a friend of a friend. Okay. So the notary's friend and their friend show up to his house. He says, here's what I've got. The notary looks at the ID. The ID matches. The individual signs, and the notary signs and stamps. Done. The notary's done. Well, this individual then took it to a title company. That title company was one of my clients and said, "Hey, I've got this warranty deed. Can you record this with the county, please?" They're looking it over. Something's not right. They do some investigating, find out it's a fraudulent activity. So they start looking into it, and lawyers are now involved. Well, this notary also gets called by an attorney, but actually the notary gets called by attorney, and then that attorney calls us. And I'm like, "Why are you calling us? I don't see this client's name in our records. I don't see any emails or in our calendars, anything to do with this client. How are we involved?" Well, apparently what happened was the title company, as they're investigating, they see, "Oh, there's this notary's name on here. And we see this notary's name with orders that we send through DVO and his team." So that's kind of how my signing service gets kind of wrapped in here. I mean, we're not in any legal trouble because we didn't hire this notary or anything like that. And this notary has to go to court and go through the whole process and litigation and find out what fraudulent activity had really been going on. However, because this is a notary that we hire, my client says, "Hey, what story do you have? What have you heard about this?" So I called the notary and talked to them. And basically what happened was this notary stopped using a journal. So in our state, it's actually not required to have a notary journal. However, I always keep a notary journal. And so because in our state we're not required to use a journal, this notary stopped using a journal. And now he had to go through some hot water. I mean, it's all cleared up now. They caught that fraudulent activity. They just had to get his side of the story of what happened. He did check the ID. It was just a fake ID is what happened. Or he didn't check it thoroughly. I'm not sure exactly. But my client just said, "Hey, because of the situation, we ask that you no longer hire this notary for any of our jobs." And I said, "Understood, I won't." And we haven't actually used that notary since. So there's one example. Another example, I just got a phone call from another one of my clients where they said, "Hey, do you remember this signing?" And I said, yeah, I remember seeing this in the calendar. They said, "Well, we just want to give you a heads up. These people had fake IDs, they had fraudulent IDs." And they just kind of asked, like, what steps are in place? And this is an ID from a different state. I don't know every state's situations with their IDs. For example, in my state, I can feel my state's ID, and I know what to feel for. because I have the same ID, right? But I know I know where to feel the laser engravings. I know how to hold up to the light, look at the holograms and the watermarks. I know how to look for these things. So the notary actually got a copy of the front and back of their IDs, and I told my client, I said, you know what? I said, I actually have a notary journal, but my notary journal is in an app, so it's on my phone. And what the app does is I can take a picture of the front of their ID, so I have a picture of it, but then I can scan the barcode on the back of their ID, and the back of the barcode should auto-populate in my notary journal app. And I use Notary Act, which is one of my sponsors, and it's in the description of every podcast episode. But I said that's a fail-safe that I have. So because the notary that we hired, because they got a picture of the front and back, let me open up the back of their ID. Let me try to scan it and see if it auto-populates. And it does not, which is why I use notary journal apps. Now, first of all, you have to make sure your state allows it. But if your state allows it, I think it's the best way to go because it's going to help you prevent fraud. If that barcode is not scanning, there is some good likelihood that this is a fake ID. And in this example, it was two people, a husband and wife. Both of their barcodes did not scan. So maybe if one didn't, maybe there's something wrong with it, but I highly doubt it. I would definitely throw some red flags up, but neither one scanned. Now, I'm sure this notary did not have an app. They probably just use a regular book journal, but that's the reason why I do not like, there's a lot of reasons why I don't like using book journals. I'm always worried about what if it falls? What if it gets stolen? I mean, when I say falls, like what if it falls in water? What if it falls somewhere and gets ruined or damaged? Falls out of somewhere and someone runs it over. Anyway, I just don't want it to get ruined. And so that's why I like having the app. It's just simple. It's just one less thing for me to carry. Plus the safeguards, like I said, where it can scan the barcode on the back. So if you're interested, go to the link in the description of the podcast or YouTube channel. Now, if your state does not allow an electronic journal, that's fine. But this is just a good reminder to use caution when you're checking IDs. Have a good notary journal. Put down the date that you met them, the address that you met them. That's what I like about it too. It keeps track of where I met them at. It keeps track of the date. It stores a picture of their ID. I've shared a story where I was called by another lawyer because they thought it was another potential fraud. Not that the people use a fake ID, but that maybe they were coercing their grandfather to sign their house over to them. So a family thought that the grandson was maybe coercing the grandfather. And because I had pulled up my notary journal and I could see their IDs that I took a picture of, and I can see their names and I have it in my calendar of where I met them and it shows me where I was at. I remembered all the details because I can't remember one signing, but if I can look at the picture of their IDs and go back, I'm like, oh yes, I remember this day. I remember this signing because I can remember faces better than I can remember names. And I was able to look them up and be like, oh yeah, this is what happened, lawyer. This is the whole situation. They go, okay, wow, you're very detailed remembering all that. We probably don't need to pull you in to the litigation actually because of all the details you gave me. And they never contacted me. The lawyers never contacted me. I don't know what happened with it because I'm not nosy. So I don't know what happened with it, but that just helped me. So this is just a good reminder to keep a journal. Even if your state doesn't require it, if I were you, I would still keep a journal. You know, because of my state, we're not required to keep a journal. A lot of my escrow officers don't keep journals. And I get it. They're doing a lot of closings. And maybe it's very time consuming to write all this in a notary book. That's why it's helpful to have the app. Because I've done multiple closings in an office and I can just scan the app. It takes seconds. I don't have to write anything in. I just scan their ID, pulls all the information up. I just put where we are, what date it is, what we're doing, like a deed of trust. They sign the app, and I have record of it. So I think it's very helpful. But even if you cannot use one, or maybe you don't like technology, this episode is a great reminder of the importance of keeping a notary journal, keeping a detailed notary journal, in my opinion. And I hope that brings you great value or a great reminder on this episode. And again, if you do find great value, please share it with other notaries. And if you don't mind subscribing, following, whatever it is that YouTube or your podcast wants you to do, if you don't mind doing that, I'd appreciate it. And I'll talk to you on a new episode next week. Bye.